Raising a bilingual child. It's such a beautiful idea, isn't it? The thought of a child who can just effortlessly switch between cultures and connect with so much more of the world. But let's be honest, for a lot of parents, it can also feel like a huge practical challenge. So let's kind of break down the blueprint for making this happen.
I mean, the Emperor Charlemagne said it perfectly centuries ago. It's not just about learning vocabulary. It's about getting a whole new perspective, a different way of seeing and being in the world. And that is an incredibly powerful gift to give a child.
Okay, so how do we get from that beautiful, poetic idea to, the real world? For a kid, from what happens at home to what happens in the classroom, what does that journey actually look like? That's the map we're going to lay out right now.
First things first, let's get really clear on the why. Because in the world we live in today, being able to speak more than one language has kind of shifted from being a nice little bonus to a genuine necessity. We're talking more opportunities, both personal and professional, in a world that is only getting more and more connected.
So, in a perfect world, what researcher Tracy Tokuhama-Espinosa calls the best of all worlds, this journey starts right from day one. Picture this. Each parent speaks their native language to the child, and the main language of the community is just sort of absorbed naturally. By the time the child is about 3.5, boom, they're a natural bilingual.
But of course, not every family fits into that perfect model. And that's okay. The good news is, success isn't really about having the perfect setup, it's about having a smart plan. So let's dig into the key ingredients for that blueprint. Okay, get this. This is fascinating. It turns out that while we can learn a language at pretty much any age, our brains have these, I guess you'd call them windows of opportunity, where they are just biologically primed for it. That first window from birth to 9 months is an absolute powerhouse. But as you can see, there are other really key periods later on that are also super effective. And what's so great about this is seeing how much is actually in your control. It's not just about timing or some natural talent. It's really about building up that motivation, picking a clear strategy, and, this is the big one, sticking with it consistently to create real, actual opportunities for your child to use both languages.
Now, when it comes to strategy, there are a few common roadmaps. The most famous one is probably one person, one language. You'll hear it called OPAL, where each parent just sticks to one language. But that is not the only way to do it. Some families create a bubble for the minority language at home. The main takeaway here isn't that one way is right, but that the best strategy is the one your family can actually be consistent with.
All right, so the journey doesn't stop at home, right? It eventually moves into the classroom. And picking the right school, man, that's a huge deal. So let's unpack what that whole world looks like.
Okay, this right here might be one of the most important things for any parent to get their head around. Is the school's goal additive, meaning it's there to enrich your child by adding a new language, or is it subtractive, where the goal is really to replace the home language with the majority one? The entire philosophy of a program really hinges on that distinction.
So you can kind of think of this as strong versus weak programs. Strong programs like Immersion or dual language schools are all in. Their goal is true bilingualism, reading and writing in both languages. Weak forms are often more about just transitioning a child into the majority language as fast as possible, which can put that home language at risk.
Let's zoom in on these immersion programs, because they're a really popular, strong model. The absolute genius of this is that kids aren't sitting in a Spanish class. They're in a science class that just happens to be taught in Spanish. The language becomes the tool, not the whole point. They soak it up because they're using it to understand everything else around them.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth does a 5-year-old understand a science lesson in a brand new language? Well, it comes down to this. Great immersion teachers are masters of making things understandable. They're using tons of body language, visuals, hands-on stuff. They are constantly checking in, making sure the main ideas are landing, even if all the vocabulary isn't there yet.
And this is so important. The environment is supportive, not stressful. Making mistakes is just seen as a normal, healthy part of learning. Teachers will correct things indirectly just by modeling the right way to say something, instead of pointing out an error. It's all about making the classroom a safe space to just try things out.
All right, so this all sounds amazing, right? But, we have to be realistic here. This journey has incredible benefits, but it's not always a walk in the park. So let's look at both sides of the coin.
Yeah, the good stuff? It's huge. There's this researcher, Colin Baker, who came up with what he calls the 6 C's. We're talking everything from better communication and cultural understanding to real cognitive benefits like more creativity. And yeah, down the line, it often leads to better jobs. That's the cash advantage.
It's a great reminder that this isn't just about language. It's about building a more capable and adaptable person.
Now, on the other hand, this takes real effort. There's a risk of a child becoming a passive bilingual, where they understand the language perfectly, but just don't feel comfortable speaking it. And there's this really common myth that bilingualism causes speech delays in toddlers, but the research just doesn't back that up at all. These are real challenges, and they all point to the same thing. This takes commitment.
So what happens when you try to roll this out, like for a whole country? Well, the challenges get a lot bigger and a lot clearer. Let's look at a real-world example.
Take Span's Bilingual Education Program, or BEP. It's a fascinating case study. It started out in '96 with just 44 primary schools. Fast forward to 2014, and just in the Madrid region alone, we're talking over 300 bilingual primary schools. That's explosive growth, and with that came some serious growing pains.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem, right? The idea was for these native-speaking assistants to support the trained teachers. But in reality, they're often just left in charge of the class without having the formal training. It's a classic gap between the plan on paper and what's actually happening in the classroom.
So this case study really shines a light on the hurdles you face with any big program like this. You've got to have teachers with strong language skills, you need great materials, and you need crystal clear goals. If teachers aren't properly trained on how to teach a subject while also teaching the language, well, both can end up suffering.
But, even with all these very real challenges, we have to circle back to the fundamental truth here. The scientific consensus is just so clear. The cognitive and social benefits of being bilingual are profound, and they are very well documented. The why is as powerful as ever.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? Raising a bilingual child, whether it's at home or through a school, is a journey. And like we've seen, that path can be, full of potholes. But the destination? A child with a richer mind, a deeper connection to the world, and that second soul we talked about at the beginning is absolutely worth the effort.
When you look at all the evidence, it's pretty clear this isn't just some nice idea. It's a real strategic investment in a child's future. So after seeing the whole map laid out, the strategies, the benefits, and the challenges, what's your first step going to be?